Hungary's president resigns. Japan slips to the world's fourth largest economy. Death toll from Philippines landslide climbs to 68. Marathon world record holder Kelvin Kiptum dies in crash at 24. Putin surprised by lack of sharp questions during Carlson interview. Global warming is making Greenland greener.
Hello, I'm Wade Lee. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It is Friday, February 16th, and here are your top stories. Hungarian President Katalin Novak has announced that she is resigning from office following mounting public criticism over her decision to pardon a man implicated in a child sexual abuse case. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of the country's capital, Budapest, last Friday, calling for Novak to step down. In April 2023, Novak had pardoned some 24 people ahead of a visit by Pope Francis, among them the deputy director of a children's home who had helped the former director hide his crimes. The director was sentenced to 8 years in prison for sexual abusing underage boys between 2004 and 2016.
Novak said in her speech during a national televised address on Saturday, "I decided to grant a pardon last April, believing that the convict did not exploit the vulnerability of the children whom he had overseen." She said, "I made a mistake, as the pardon and the lack of reasoning were conducive to triggering doubts about the zero tolerance that applies to pedophilia." Novak is a close ally of Hungary's hardline nationalist Prime Minister Viktor Orban and was the former family minister. In 2022, she became the first woman to hold the largely ceremonial role of Hungarian president. Saturday's address was her final one as president, less than 2 years after she took office. She apologized to victims and their families in her televised speech on Saturday, saying she had made a mistake.
Japan has slipped to the world's fourth largest economy as government data released Thursday showed it fell behind the size of Germany's in 2023. The numbers highlight how the Japanese economy has gradually lost its competitiveness and productivity while the population shrinks as Japanese people age and have fewer children. Japan fell from the second-ranked economy behind the US to the third largest in 2010 as China's economy grew. Both Japan and Germany built their economies through strong small and medium-sized businesses with solid productivity. In contrast to Japan, Germany has shown a solid economy foundation on the back of a strong euro and inflation. The weak yen also works as a minus for Japan.
The comparisons among nations' economies look at nominal GDP, which doesn't reflect some different national conditions and is in dollar terms. Japan's nominal GDP totaled $4.2 trillion last year, or about 591 trillion yen. Germany's, announced last month, was $4.4 trillion, or $4.5 trillion, depending on the currency conversion. For the latest October to December quarter, the Japanese economy shrank at an annual rate of 0.4% and minus 0.1% from the previous quarter, according to Cabinet Office data on real GDP. For the year, real GDP grew 1.9% from the previous year. The latest data reflect the realities of a weakening Japan and will likely result in Japan's commanding a lesser presence in the world.
The death toll from a landslide in the southern Philippines have climbed to 68 as officials say the window for finding more survivors is closing. Hundreds of rescuers have used their bare hands, shovels, and heavy earth-moving equipment for nearly a week, looking for those buried since last Tuesday's landslide hit the mountainous Masara village on Mindanao Island. More than a dozen bodies were pulled from the mud on Monday, with 51 people still missing, including mine workers and villages, according to official figures released by the municipal government. Rain have pounded parts of Mindanao on and off for weeks, triggering dozens of landslides and floods that have forced tens of thousands of people into emergency shelters.
The landslide injured 32 people and buried 55 houses, 3 buses and a jeepney, a minibus converted from a jeep that was waiting for employees of a gold mining firm. Mako Town disaster officer Ariel Capoy said, Disaster authorities plan to shift their focus from search and rescue to search and retrieval beginning on Tuesday. Landslides are a frequent hazard across much of the archipelago nation due to its mountainous terrain, heavy rainfall, and widespread deforestation from mining, slash-and-burn farming, and illegal logging. The United States, through the U.S. Agency for International Development, was providing $1.25 million in humanitarian aid to the affected communities in the southern islands.
Marathon world record holder Kelvin Kiptum, who was said to be a superstar of long-distance running, was killed along with his coach in a car crash in Kenya late Sunday. Kiptum was 24. World Athletics, the International Track Federation, had just last week ratified the world record he set last year at the Chicago Marathon. Kiptum, who was Kenyan, and his Rwandan coach were killed in the crash at around 11 p.m. The crash happened on a road between the towns of Eldoret and Kaptagat in western Kenya, in the heart of the high-altitude region that's renowned as a training base for distance runners.
The Kenyan Track Federation said it was deeply saddened to announce the deaths of Kiptum and Hakizimana. Kenyan media reported that only one car was involved in the crash and a third person, a woman, was also in the vehicle and was taken to the same hospital with serious injuries. Kiptum was the first man to run the marathon in under 2 hours, 1 minute in an official race when he set the world record of 2 minutes 0 seconds and 35 milliseconds in Chicago in October, beating the mark of fellow Kenyan and marathon great Eliud Kipchoge. He was due to compete at the Rotterdam Marathon in April, which would have been his first event since breaking the world record. Kiptum was the latest of numerous top Kenyan runners to die in tragic road accidents.
Days after giving an interview to U.S. television host Tucker Carlson, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said he was grateful for the opportunity, but at the same time surprised by the lack of sharp questions from the former Fox News host. Speaking to a Russian journalist, Pavel Zarubin, Putin said he wanted Carlson to be aggressive in his behavior, as it would have allowed him to reply just as pointedly. Carlson released a 2-hour interview with Putin last week that made global headlines, as it was the Russian president's first correspondence with an American journalist since the Ukraine war began 2 years ago. Putin said he agreed to the interview, as Carlson's approach differed from the one-sided reporting of the war by other Western news journalists and outlets.
Putin said, "To be honest, I thought that he would behave aggressively and ask so-called sharp questions. I was not just prepared for this. I wanted it, because it would give me the opportunity to respond in the same way." During the interview, Putin said the war with Ukraine could be over within a few weeks if the Western nations stopped supplying weapons to Kyiv, emphasizing the goals of what he called the special military operation in Ukraine. The Russian president said it was yet to be achieved since one of the aims is denazification. Putin added the West now understood that Russia won't be defeated even though Ukraine was receiving support from the US, European Union, and NATO.
Global warming is turning Greenland green. Parts of Greenland's ice sheet and glacier that melt over the past 3 decades have been replaced by wetlands, shrub vegetation, and areas of barren rock, according to a new study that used satellite images to track changes since the 1980s. The findings, published Tuesday in the journal Scientific Reports, raise concerns about how Greenland's retreating ice could threaten the stability of the landscape, exacerbate rising sea levels, and contribute further greenhouse gas emissions in areas that have turned into methane-producing wetlands.
Greenland is often considered ground zero for the climate crisis because even small shifts in temperature can have outsized impacts across the entire Arctic region and around the world. Scientists have estimated that if the Greenland ice sheet were to melt completely, it could raise global sea levels by more than 23 feet. The study found that an estimated 11,000 square miles of Greenland's ice sheet and glaciers have melted over the past 30 years, an area roughly 9 times the size of Rhode Island and equivalent to around 1.6% of Greenland's total ice cover. Using satellite images, the researchers found that the amount of land with vegetation growing on it has increased by 33,774 square miles from the mid-1980s through the mid-2010s.
The answer for yesterday was A, precipitously. The company has seen its profit fall precipitously over the past few years. Now let's delve into the news of Japan's slips to the world's fourth largest economy. Number 1, shrink, 缩小, 减少. The market for their product is shrinking. Number 2, solid, 相当不错的. 2004 was a year of solid achievement. Number 3, inflation, 通货膨胀. Wage increases must be in line with inflation. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comment section and the correct answer will be announced tomorrow. And that's it for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Wade Lee, your host. I'll see you next time.